back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively wrapping up our coverage here in Houston, Texas, where the Ravens did the home guys dirty here amidst no one in the stadium. It was a very, very strange atmosphere. Luke Jones now joins us. You've become like a veteran to this sports for no one. Like when it's all over with, you're going to say like you attended as many sports events for no one as anybody because you've been going to these baseball games. This was my first one, dude. And as you can see over the shoulder here, it was weird, really, really weird, man.
It's definitely weird. And I told you it's weird to think, and we've talked about this for years about sports being a made-for-TV event. That's all it is right now. Other than the select cities right now that are letting in 5,000-10,000 people in a 70,000 seat stadium, it's weird. It definitely is, and it's a little jarring. Like it's as I've said all along, I'll take it being weird and less than perfect rather than nothing at all. But it can be a little jarring. So you can imagine, even if you're just some reporter just sitting in the press box, you can imagine how strange it has to be for the players and the coaches. I mean, you think about the NFL especially. I mean, baseball, you're used to seeing some small crowds, especially in smaller markets and last place teams playing out the string. But even the worst NFL teams typically will draw at least 20,000, actual people in the stands for most of the season. And I'm talking about the low end there. It's very jarring. So
Luke, I'm going to be honest with you. I was at the Liberty Bowl in 97. It looked like this.
Yeah. So, I mean, sure, you can find those. But when it's truly no one there other than reporters and staffers, I mean, it's different. It really is. And that's why, Calais Campbell and John Harbaugh talked about it in week 1 with the whole BYOE, bring your own energy. I mean, it truly is something that I think some teams handle well, others won't handle well. I think certain individuals might be a little more at ease, and others it might be a little more, hey, it's tough to really get your competitive mojo going a little bit. So
we talked about it being more like a golf event or like a tennis event.
Yeah.
Dude, up here, they're shooting off bombs. They're, they were, letting all the fans up onto the screen, and they, there was noise in here at various points. But it was, I've been in a lot. I'm in here empty right now, so it's quiet. So I'm used to leaving every building 3-4 hours after the game and it being spooky, eerily quiet. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's a part of that I wasn't as weirded out. But it definitely got weird as we were getting up on kickoff and there was no one, right? Like you walk into the stadium where it's empty every week and there's cookouts and tailgates and all that going on. Dude, I pulled into Houston. There's a hurricane going on, literally, right? And I got drenched coming into a stadium where there were like 38 cars. Literally, I counted 38 cars in a parking lot meant for 12,000 cars.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I think for me, and I think I said this to you last week, one of the strangest moments was when the Browns were running out of the tunnel and there was just no reaction. And even the Browns, obviously Pittsburgh or New England, teams you expect to be booed. That's one thing, but you kind of hear at least a little bit of that for any team you play. Whether it's your biggest rival or the worst team in the NFL, and to have none of that, it was very strange. To hear the Ravens be introduced and they're playing, they're playing Metallica, but there's no reaction to it really, other than just the players themselves being hyped. It's definitely strange.
Dude, you're a wrestling guy, right? So they're always cutting these promos in front of nobody. Remember the old ones, when they would come out and George the Animal Steel had to do his thing in an empty studio for him, Vince, and probably 3 guys holding the camera and a headset like we're wearing right now. There was a little bit of that. They ran out the corner behind me. And when the Ravens came out, you usually hear the boos. When the Texans come out, they shoot off all the fire. They do all of that. And they're sort of doing it for nobody. It's, I hope this doesn't continue. I mean for our society. For me. But I'll say this: I've been into the football. Like when it happened on the field, man, I was all in, and I'm fully what the wrestling fans would they say you're a mark. I'm bought in, and maybe because we're 2-0, I'm bought in. I would think that your brother-in-law who's loving the Eagles probably not real happy right now. If you're 0-2 right now, it's easy to say, Well, it's like being an Orioles fan. It wasn't a real season.
He already texted me. I think it was the second quarter on Sunday, saying that he's just going to watch college football because he said the Eagles are bad for his health right now. But no, it's different. I mean, it really is, and I'll keep coming back to perfect's the enemy of good. I've said that over and over to you, but it really does come down to just how much do you love a sport? I mean, you've talked about it with other sports you've struggled. There's certain sports I've watched in this COVID environment where I'm not feeling it as much. I think it really comes down to how much do you really dig the sport itself? I mean, the spectacle is obviously part of it and it's baked in, and that's why certain elements are very weird of this. But it still comes down to you're watching Lamar Jackson do his thing. You're watching Calais Campbell bat down passes the way he did last week against Cleveland. You're seeing
Or J.J. Watt in this case, too.
yeah, you're seeing the defense take the ball away and Marcus Peters do his thing. So, I mean, certain elements of that, and maybe it being on the road as a fan, if you're just speaking from a fan perspective, if you're not someone who travels to 3 or 4 road games every year or never go to road games, maybe watching it on the road and with the artificial crowd noise that they at least have on the TV broadcast, you kind of forget. You kind of think about it in the context of, oh, it's just a regular road game. So it's different, but when the quality of play is good, and that's one thing I will say about the NFL, just globally looking at it over the last 2 weeks, the quality of play has been better than I thought it would be. Not perfect, and certainly you can point to elements and people, and I know we're going to hear people talk about the lack of a preseason and just the slew of season-ending and serious injuries we saw in week 2. But look, those injuries occur in the preseason or they're going to occur in the regular season. There's just going to be attrition. You're the only way you're eliminating injuries in football is if you're eliminating football, period. I mean, that's just the way it is. So some beyond that though, I think overall the play has been pretty good overall. And that's not to say certain teams haven't looked lousy, but it's the NFL and it's football. And if you dig it, you're still going to enjoy it, even if there aren't fans, even fully acknowledging that, yeah, we hope that we're not talking about crowdless games. You'd love to see some fans in some of these cities that haven't had it to this point at some point before the end of the year, but certainly by 2021, you're hoping by then, by next fall, we're back to something close to normal at the very least.
Well, I had a good time. Like, despite
Yeah.
how weird it was, I really expected this to be sort of somber. And, I arrived right in time for the game and I ran through the raindrops and I come in and it's kind of empty and they gave me some barbecue and the game started. And other than sort of the weird post game that I did from 2 feet away and, broadcasting here from up on the roof and flying home early in the morning, in and out, things not all that weird for me. But, I would just say this, the home field advantage part of just taking the team bus in here and seeing the barbecue and seeing how crazy it can be here or anywhere. I don't know what the black hole will hold in Vegas, but I'm thinking of places where I pulled in the parking lots, Philadelphia and places like that, the Jets, where you come in off of exit 16W and you pull in and it's either blue or green and it's nuts, right? All of that being gone, I think about it being easier for the Chiefs to win next Monday. I think of it being easier for the Ravens to come down here. And look, it's all balanced out. It all weighs out. If there's nobody anywhere, or if there's, Jarris putting people in there, I'm sure the fans down in the Big D, they wheeled Jerry and the Cowboys back because the fans were there. And there weren't any fans here, and we're in the same state, and it's just freaky. But it's different for the Chiefs coming to Baltimore Monday Night Football, for Patrick Mahomes to operate, as it was different for Lamar to operate here on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And even with some of these partial capacity scenarios, they're not having enough fans where you can't hear and you're going to have pre-snap penalties and things of that nature. I mean, that's why some of I've seen a few coaches around the league, and I've seen a lot of fans talk, "Oh, that's unfair."
Luke, I always wanted to be the disruptive fan.
Right.
And when you think about the reputation we have in Baltimore, that we would cost Mahomes a timeout or some confusion next Monday that won't be there, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
because it's always a key play. It's always 3rd down and 4th down, right?
Sure. I mean, home field, I wouldn't go as far as home field advantage not existing anymore, because there's still something to be said about the familiarity of your surroundings, not getting on a plane, especially a long plane ride potentially. So you have some of that, but yeah, I mean, the crowd part of home field advantage, which is obviously a big part of it, and it's kind of baked into the nature of the game. I mean, think about you use hand signals, you use silent snap counts, you audible, and you use code because you're trying to deal with noise and try not to have the other team pick it up in the process. That's a big part of it. I mean, the Ravens practice with crowd noise all the time. They practice with loud music all the time, and when that's minimized or completely eliminated in some of these settings, yeah, you are talking about it is cruel from the standpoint of the Ravens went to Kansas City each of the last 2 years, lost, you know, 2018 a major heartbreaker. 2019 they had a chance, even though Kansas City kind of sort of ahead of them by 2 scores for a large chunk of that game. But now Kansas City finally coming to Baltimore after they didn't come to Baltimore for the AFC Championship because of the Ravens' own self-inflicted problems against Tennessee. But you finally get that shot against Mahomes and the Chiefs in your home stadium, and there aren't going to be any fans there. So it's a bummer. There's no question about that. And again, I'll come back to no one's saying this scenario is ideal, but they're 2-0. They've been entertaining. They look very much like, if not the best team in the league, they're certainly 1A, right there with Kansas City. And you can talk about a couple other teams here or there, but they look every bit the part of a Super Bowl favorite that they were last year prior to the Tennessee game. And from that standpoint, even if fans haven't been able to enjoy in person, they're still enjoying from their couches at home. And that's going to be the case on Monday night, regardless of the fact that it's going to be an empty stadium downtown, which is definitely unfortunate, just given the nature, the build-up of this game. And everyone's going to be talking about it all week. If you ask someone what the AFC Championship's going to be, they're going to say Baltimore and Kansas City, with no disrespect meant to Pittsburgh or Tennessee or some other teams that have looked okay. They are the class of the AFC, and it definitely stinks that it's not going to be a crowd of 71,000 hooping and hollering and yelling at Patrick Mahomes.
Want to give a shout out to our friends at King Discount Liquors, giving the King a ring. It is pandemic fever, and my wife has said, we need more tequila. We're out of tequila again. So where am I going to get that? You got to go to King Discount Liquors. Give the King a ring out of Pulaski Highway in Rosedale. Also, our friends at Planet Fitness. We've talked a lot about safety and all that we need to do. Staying in shape is important. So whether you're working out or working in, make sure you're giving some love to our friends at Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. And, of course, our friends at Faidley, shipping those crab cakes all over the world. We're missing doing shows down there. You can ship those crab cakes at faidleys.com from anywhere you are to where they are. You can do that with the Taharka ice cream as well. We'll be telling you more about that as Sean and the Taharka group is going to be coming on to talk about why I love the honey graham so much. And most importantly, now that they've taken the heirloom tomatoes away and the Silver Queen corn and especially the peaches, pumpkin spices here, but eggnog ice cream around the corner from Taharka. So we're looking forward to that. Look, I know you want to talk about coaching, right? Like we've been firing Bill O'Brien around here at WNST all week. And lo and behold, I look up and Lamar's got the ball on the 34-yard line. And we're like, what the hell are you doing, Bill?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about what we've seen the first 2 weeks, I mean, go back to the Cleveland game, first quarter, the Browns fake a punt. It was abysmal. It didn't work out. LJ Fort made a great play with a big hit and the forced fumble, and the Ravens sets them up on a short field. What we saw.
By the way, Dave Zastinel thought that was a bad play.
Right. What we saw in the first quarter, end of the first quarter, 4th and 1, Deshaun Watson passes incomplete. But you know what, Nestor? We can say that it's a bad decision because it didn't work out. But what I really take away from it is these teams got the memo of how difficult it is to stop the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, that's just the truth. And frankly, and we've talked about this, go all the way back to week 3 last year when all this 4th down madness really started. The Ravens had done it a little bit the year before, and we'd seen John Harbaugh introduce those 4th downs a little bit year by year. But it really came into focus in that trip to Kansas City last year. Why? Because he was thinking about the number of possessions he needs to try to beat a team like Kansas City that has that explosive offense. You're not going to get that many stops. Even if you have a great defense, you're hoping that you can get a handful, 2, 3, maybe 4 stops over the course of the game, because you just know how unstoppable Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense is. Well, guess what? when you lead the NFL in points scored, when you set a single season rushing record, when you have the league MVP at quarterback who led the league in touchdown passes, word gets out very quickly that this team is incredibly difficult to stop from putting points on the scoreboard. So what we're seeing is teams saying, we need to be more aggressive. Now, what I find interesting, it's not even so much, we could talk about the play call, certainly. I don't have a major problem with what Bill O'Brien tried to do at the end of the first quarter. What I find something that you can't defend nearly as easily is what happened at the start of the fourth quarter. When you consider the game is 23-10, you're inside the red zone. I understand it's 3rd and 6, and Deshaun Watson throws a low pass to Brandon Cooks, kind of kicking yourself. But at that point in time, you're down 13 points. You know what this offense is capable of doing in terms of running the football. And, not that they had run the ball particularly well over the first 3 quarters, but at that point, when you decide to kick a field goal, it's now a 10-point game. You're saying, we are going to get the ball back 2 more times, which is not guaranteed with the way the Ravens can control the clock. And we saw them do that as far as holding the ball and sustaining drives. And also you're saying in that situation, when you settle for a field goal, we're going to stop the Ravens. We're going to get another stop.
Well, it
So
felt to me like you're entering the jaws of the shark, playing that style. And I would say at home in a normal circumstance, for jargon, right? But you're not going to win that way. I mean, you and I joke about it every week. I mean, every time Justin Tucker would come on to kick a field goal in the Joe Flacco offense, and 3 drives that stall at the 34-yard line, and we got 9 points. It never felt like a recipe to win, for sure.
Well, but that's where I go back to it. He tries the 4th down and 1 in the first quarter, and then and look, I know it's 6 yards to go, but you're down 13 points. You need touchdowns. You kick a field goal that a 2-score game is still a 2-score game. So to me, if you're going to go for the 4th and 1 in the first quarter from your own territory the way that you did, I don't think it's even a decision. You go for it on 4th and 6 from the Baltimore 17 on the 3rd play of the 4th quarter. And look, if you don't get it, yeah, I understand you're in a major bind, but that field goal didn't help you. And then
you lost anyway. You lost by a lot, literally, right?
But that's my point. And this is what drives me crazy with some of these coaches around the league. And this is where I give John Harbaugh a lot of credit. And look, I think it's very interesting. You go back to the Tennessee loss last year. What did we talk about? The 2 4th and 1s that they didn't get after they had been perfect on 4th and 1 yard to go all season. They got stuffed on those 2. And he was second guessed and criticized. And look, that comes with the territory when you're going to go for it on 4th down, especially when you're either within scoring distance that you can kick a field goal with the greatest kicker in the NFL history, or you're in a position where you're putting your defense on a short field potentially. You leave yourself open to second guessing. But what we saw on Sunday in week 2 was John Harbaugh didn't decide to change, wasn't going to change his style based on what happened in that Titans game. And you look at it, first of all, the 4th and 1 where they do the direct snap to Ingram, I would have been way more surprised if they had kicked a field goal there, just based on the fact that kind of arguing my same point that I was for why Houston should have gone for it. You're up by 10, you kick a field goal, you're still only up by 2 scores. So go for it in that spot. Not that you're going to score a touchdown on the play to Ingram where he goes 30 yards, but you convert it, you keep the clock running, and you put yourself in a position where you can score a touchdown to make it a 3-score game. So that one I wasn't remotely surprised about. However, I'm not going to lie, I was a little more surprised when, despite the fact they're leading by 2 touchdowns and Houston had put another field goal on the board and they're hanging on barely, I did think the 4th and 1 from his own 36, that's a little more risky. But remember, Lamar Jackson came so close to picking it up. It was just a few inches. They knew Lamar was sneaking it, and Harbaugh even said that in the post-game press conference. There's a spot that if he gets stuffed and Deshaun Watson throws a touchdown on the next play, well, there's 6 minutes to go, and it's a 1-score game all of a sudden. But John Harbaugh's not thinking that way. He's thinking in terms of them getting the first down. And I know a lot of people, and I even had people tweeting me after Lamar gets the first down there. They said, I still think it was a lousy decision. And look, I think that one certainly is up for more debate. But I'll tell you this, from an analytics standpoint, they will tell you on 4th and 1, short of being maybe inside your own 12-yard line, something along those lines off the top of my head, the analytics tell you to go for it. Now, doesn't mean John Harbaugh should listen to that every single time, and he has to have a certain amount of
I have
feel
never
for it.
hit on
But
17 no matter what the book says.
yeah, but I think he also recognized that his running game, they wanted to get it going. They definitely picked up some mojo and confidence from the previous drive and the touchdown to Ingram. So he figured, you know what? We need 6 inches here to move the sticks, keep the ball out of Deshaun Watson's hands. We already have a 2-score lead. We can all but ice this thing, and they pick it up. They take another 3 minutes or so off the clock, and they tack on another field goal to make it a 17-point game. So so there you go. You do take a little bit of a risk there, but you take more time off the clock, and what was a 2-score game again becomes a 3-score game. So you just look at it, and if you're going to take a risk, you have to understand why you're doing it. And that's why I go back to not so much what Bill O'Brien decided to do in the first quarter that didn't work out. I go back to kicking a field goal on 4th and 6 to begin the fourth quarter. When you're down, you're down 13 points. You need 2 scores. What's that field goal really helping you with there? Because you really have the confidence that, 1, you're going to get 2 more possessions, and 2, you're going to stop the Ravens from scoring for an entire quarter. That's again where you have to recognize where it makes sense to risk it and when it doesn't make sense to risk it. And John Harbaugh, certainly there was some risk he took on with that second 4th and 1 that he went for, but it's very much in line with what we've seen going back to really the start of last year. But even a couple years before that, we saw some instances of being aggressive on 4th down. And I think the mastery and the edge that the Ravens have given themselves in those situations is something that doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, or isn't the most conscious thought when you look at all the stats and points scored and what Lamar did last year. But it really does feed into the whole idea of, we talked for years, what was the saying we always had about Bill Belichick in New England? They're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. When it comes to 4th downs, the Ravens are playing chess when it comes compared to everyone else playing checkers. And yeah, it didn't work out for them in the playoff game against Tennessee, but you look at that over the long haul, and I'll say it even in future postseason contests, you're going to come out ahead in the long haul, even if, you are going to have an instance or two where it's not going to work out.
Luke Jones picking on coaching, and he's not even in Atlanta today, right? I mean, how about that? I mean, talk about the things that can go right or wrong, right? So you mentioned O'Brien's decisions and where it leads and what the statistics say and what the odds are. Whatever the percentage of the Cowboys winning was, the 2% they had or whatever it was that the prognosticators – there's something about the league that, like, once a week something happens that's weird. You just need to make sure it's not you urinating away the 13-point lead in the fourth quarter on the road in Houston to another quarterback who's pretty good too. And the Ravens don't ever do that, right? I mean, we don't ever beat John Harbaugh up on Monday morning and talk dirty about him, because it feels like, I mean, even when they go on 4th and 1, you have a strategy for it. We're not scratching our heads saying, what was he thinking? Maybe sometimes when Harbaugh pulls the red flag out, we think that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, people did that after the playoff loss because, like I said, those were the 2 4th and 1s they didn't get all season long. And to me, it just spoke to them getting beat on the line of scrimmage that night against the Titans. And I mean, it was very unfortunate, and it's easy to second guess it, but that was a strategy that they had wild success with all year long. And I would much rather have a coach who is playing to win a game rather than just going by the book to save face. How many decisions do you see week after week when you really think about it? And I mean, you can, go back to, we talked about Bill O'Brien, the decision to kick the field goal on 4th and 6 at the start of the fourth quarter rather than going for it. But then you look at after the Tucker field goal, it's 4th and 13 from their own 22, and they're down 33-16, and they punted the ball. I mean, and look, at that point,
they might just put a white flag up at that point and just told everybody, everybody did go home. Told me to go home.
Right, but my point there, and look, when Tucker hits the 20-yard field goal on the long drive there where it's 33-16, yeah, the game's over at that point. But I mean, it's 4th and 13 and you just punt there. I mean, you might as well signal to your team, guys, you can go to the locker room now because I'm waving the white flag here. I mean, it's just the way it works. And so you see this week after week at the collegiate level and the NFL level where coaches will make decisions so that the game doesn't look worse than it already does. Instead of, even if it's the smallest percentage of a chance of pulling off a miracle comeback, these coaches, they'll punt or they'll kick a field goal that'll make the score look a little tidier, and they feel something about that. I don't know if they're supposed to feel good or what. Is it really better to lose by 17 rather than 24, or to lose by 10 rather than 13? I mean, these things that coaches do sometimes, again, are you just doing it because that's the conventional way that it's always been done? Or are you doing things to try to maximize your win probability? And like it or not, disagree with it or not. And look, there have been times, as I said, the second, 4th and 1 on Sunday, I definitely, I was way more surprised about that one than the previous one on the Ingram touchdown. But when you look at it from a win probability standpoint, picking up the first down there, continuing to chew clock, and moving the ball down the field more, I mean, it made sense. And it's not what most coaches do, but you don't want to be like the other teams, right? I mean, we've talked about this revolution since the start of last year. The Ravens do things very differently from other teams. And, well, I'd say it's worked out for them pretty darn well, having won 14 straight in the regular season.
He's Luke Jones. You can find him, Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. I have enjoyed all about 8 hours of my time in Houston, in and out, clean hands. I got my Be United mask on, and it was a successful trip to Houston, especially if I beat the Hurricane. Back to Baltimore. Full coverage all week long. Luke will be in Owings Mills. Bill Cole going to be joining us from Cole Roofing a little later on in the week to talk about the merger of WNST.net and Baltimore Positive as we're doing some new things, and I hope everybody's going to be checking that out and digging it. We have Election Palooza coming up this week and full coverage of all things Chiefs from Kansas City. Got a lot of friends in Kansas City that want to talk about their royal experience and their reigning Super Bowl champion, but not a Super Bowl MVP, but not a regular season MVP. Either way, the bright lights on Baltimore and an empty stadium on Monday night. What do you got for me, Luke?
He was the year before. Lamar Jackson.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Patrick Mahomes, MVP in 2018, Super Bowl MVP and champion in 2019. So Lamar trying to follow that same trend. How about that?
Big week ahead and an extra day to sit around and enjoy football on Thursday, enjoy football on Sunday, and then fire up a little Rofo chicken or whatever you need to do. Maybe some crab cakes from our friends down at Al's, or some crabs. Crabs and a 3-0 start. That would be a way to do next Monday night. They don't let me in the press box, Luke. I'm going to have crabs with my football. Keep me off Twitter. We are WNST.net, AM 1570. Big shout out and thanks to our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions. They took care of my water heater. If anybody knows Doug Workman, if you're up in the northern part of Baltimore County, make sure you give them a shout out as well for all the plumbing needs. You got well water, any of those kind of needs at all. Our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions. We've worn the hat. We've told you about them. We'll be telling you more about them as well. I am Nestor. On behalf of Luke Jones, you can find him at Baltimore Luke and Luke at WNST.net. He'll be in Owings Mills all week. I will be freshening up and, 2-0 start to the season. I don't get on a whole lot of airplanes over 24 years and fly home from from a pretty good football place, pretty good football team. We got some banners up here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Taos and Baltimore, and we never stop talking the 2-0 Baltimore Ravens and Baltimore Positive.